The tragic life and end of the Commodores members, this is sad. What if I told you that behind the glittering lights, platinum records, and unforgettable hits, the members of the legendary Commodores were hiding stories of heartbreak, betrayal, and tragedy? From the painful split that tore Lionel Richie away from his brothers to the devastating illness that claimed Milan Williams and the endless legal wars that fractured their legacy, the truth is far darker than the music ever revealed. This is not just about fame, it's about loss, survival, and the heavy cost of greatness. Stay tuned, subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence, and let's uncover the shocking reality together. Lionel Richie. Lionel Richie's journey is one of extraordinary triumphs and haunting consequences, a story that mirrors both the glitter of fame and the fractures it can leave behind. Born on June 20th, 1949 in Tuskegee, Alabama, Richie grew up in a close-knit community deeply tied to Tuskegee University. It was there in the late 1960s that fate stepped in. While standing in a registration line, Richie was overheard whistling a jazz tune by fellow student Thomas McClary. That moment sparked a partnership that would evolve into the legendary Commodores, a group that would go on to redefine funk and soul music in the 1970s. With his smooth voice and heartfelt songwriting, Richie became the undeniable centerpiece of the Commodores. Hits like Easy 1977 and Three Times a Lady 1978 showcased his gift for ballads that could bring arenas to silence. By the time Still topped the charts in 1979, Richie was no longer just the lead singer, he was the heart of the band's success. Yet while the Commodores thrived, Richie's ambitions began to outgrow the collective. Motown executives encouraged him to try solo projects, and after penning Lady for Kenny Rogers in 1980, Richie realized he could dominate as a songwriter and performer on his own terms. This decision would change everything. In 1982, Richie released his self-titled debut solo album, selling over 4 million copies in the US alone. His sophomore album, Can't Slow Down 1983, became a juggernaut, selling more than 20 million copies worldwide and earning him 2 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. Songs like All Night Long Hello and Say You Say Me turned Richie into a household name, his music crossing racial, cultural, and generational boundaries. By the mid-1980s, he was one of the most recognizable voices on the planet, even co-writing We Are the World in 1985, which raised millions for famine relief in Africa. But behind the glittering solo career lay a fractured past. The way Richie left the Commodores still stings decades later. Bandmates like William King recalled waiting for him to return after promising he would come back once certain projects ended. Each time, Richie became further consumed by solo fame until the gap between him and the group grew unbridgeable. To them, it felt like abandonment, a wound that time has never fully healed. Do you think Lionel Richie should have returned to the Commodores for at least one reunion album, or was his solo destiny too powerful to resist? The bitterness of that split continues to echo. While Richie insists he never intended to desert his friends, his choices left scars. His success often overshadowed the Commodores, with audiences assuming he was solely responsible for their biggest hits. That perception unfairly diminished the contributions of other members and fueled resentment. Today, Lionel Richie's career stands as a towering achievement: over 100 million records sold worldwide, an Academy Award, a Golden Globe, and 4 Grammy Awards. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2022, cementing his place among the greatest artists of all time. Yet for all the accolades, the shadow of what might have been with the Commodores lingers. Fans still wonder what the group could have achieved had Richie stayed longer, or had there been a true reunion. His story is both inspiring and tragic, a testament to the brilliance of a man who reached unimaginable heights, but at the cost of breaking the brotherhood that first gave him a stage. Kenny Rogers. Kenny Rogers was more than just a country singer. He was a cultural icon whose voice transcended genres, turning him into one of the most successful and beloved entertainers of the 20th century. Born on August 21, 1938 in Houston, Texas, Rogers grew up poor, the fourth of 8 children in a working-class family. Music became his escape from hardship, and by the 1960s, he was already experimenting with different styles, from jazz with the Bobby Doyle Trio to psychedelic rock with the First Edition. But it wasn't until the 1970s that he truly found his calling, blending country storytelling with pop accessibility, creating a sound that would bring him worldwide fame. His breakthrough came with Lucille in 1977, a heartbreaking ballad about betrayal which shot to the top of charts internationally. From there, Rogers became unstoppable. The Gambler 1978, with its timeless advice to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, became not just a song, but a philosophy for millions. The track earned him a Grammy and cemented his identity as America's wise, rugged storyteller. Over the course of his career, Rogers sold more than 100 million records worldwide, making him one of the best-selling music artists of all time. But one of the most pivotal moments in his career was his collaboration with Lionel Richie. Richie, fresh off success with the Commodores, wrote Lady specifically for Rogers in 1980. The ballad became one of the biggest hits of Rogers' career, topping the Billboard Hot 100 for 6 consecutive weeks, and becoming the first single of the 1980s to chart on all 4 major Billboard charts: pop, country, adult contemporary, and R&B. This song not only showcased Rogers' versatility, but also linked his name forever with Lionel Richie, a friendship that would last for decades. Do you think Kenny Rogers' crossover into pop music helped country gain mainstream acceptance? Or did it blur the lines too much between genres? Beyond music, Rogers was also a successful businessman, actor, and even photographer. Yet behind his golden voice and warm smile, his personal life was far from perfect. He married 5 times and often admitted that his relentless touring schedule strained his relationships. Despite the fame and wealth, Rogers confessed in interviews that he struggled to balance family and career, a battle that haunted him until the end of his life. Rogers' final years were marked by both celebration and tragedy. In 2015, he announced his retirement, embarking on a farewell tour that allowed fans to say goodbye. Sadly, declining health cut the tour short. He battled a series of ailments, and by 2018, he was forced to step away from the stage altogether. On March 20th, 2020, Kenny Rogers passed away peacefully in hospice care at the age of 81, surrounded by family. His death was mourned worldwide, with tributes pouring in from fans, fellow musicians, and even Lionel Richie, who called him a true friend and a musical giant. Kenny Rogers left behind a towering legacy: 3 Grammy Awards, 6 Country Music Association Awards, 24 #1 hits, and induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame. His songs remain timeless, reminding listeners that storytelling, when sung with heart, never fades. He was the gambler, the man who taught the world to take chances, yet his own life showed just how high the stakes of fame could truly be. Diana Ross. Diana Ross has long been regarded as the ultimate diva of American music, a woman whose elegance and voice helped reshape the sound of popular culture. Born on March 26, 1944 in Detroit, Michigan, Ross grew up in the city that would become the heartbeat of Motown Records. As a teenager, she joined a girl group called the Primettes, which would soon transform into the Supremes, the act that put both Diana and Motown on the world stage. By the mid-1960s, the Supremes had become Motown's crown jewel. With Ross at the front, they scored 12 #1 Billboard hits, including classics like Baby Love Stop, In the Name of Love, and You Can't Hurry Love. At a time when racial divisions still plagued America, Diana Ross was a black woman who broke barriers, appearing on television magazine covers and international tours, helping Motown's founder Berry Gordy realize his dream of crossing over to white mainstream audiences. Yet success came at a price. Critics often claimed Ross was favored by Gordy, creating tension within the Supremes. By 1970, she left the group to launch her solo career. Her solo debut, Diana Ross, produced the hit Ain't No Mountain High Enough, proving she could command the spotlight alone. Over the next decade, Ross delivered hits like Touch Me in the Morning theme from Mahogany Do You Know Where You're Going To and Love Hangover. In 1980, she released Diana, one of the most successful albums of her career, featuring Upside Down and I'm Coming Out, both of which remain disco anthems. It was during this era that her path crossed closely with Lionel Richie. In 1981, Richie wrote and produced the ballad Endless Love, a duet with Ross for the movie of the same name. The song became a cultural phenomenon, topping the Billboard Hot 100 for 9 consecutive weeks and earning an Academy Award nomination. It remains one of the best-selling duets of all time. Their collaboration not only introduced Ross to a new generation of fans, but also cemented Richie's rise as a solo artist. Do you think Diana Ross's decision to leave the Supremes was necessary for her to reach global superstardom? Or did it fracture something too powerful to ever be replaced? But behind her radiant smile, Ross also carried heavy burdens. Her personal life was turbulent: 5 children from 2 marriages and a headline-making relationship with Berry Gordy that produced her daughter Rhonda. She faced battles with depression, substance struggles, and accusations of being difficult to work with. The glare of fame sometimes turned cruel, and her reputation as a diva overshadowed the sacrifices she made to succeed in a ruthless industry. Still, Ross's achievements remain monumental. She has sold over 100 million records worldwide, earned a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, a Golden Globe, a Tony Award, and in 2016, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Barack Obama. In 2022, she stunned audiences again, performing at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in London at the age of 78, proving her voice and presence were still magnetic. Diana Ross's story is one of brilliance and survival. She was the face of Motown, the voice of a generation, and the diva who taught the world what it meant to rise from a Detroit housing project to global superstardom. Yet, like many icons, her victories came with scars, reminders that the higher one climbs, the lonelier the spotlight can become. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's voice was velvet, his lyrics soulful, and his presence magnetic. Born on April 2, 1939 in Washington, D.C., Gaye grew up in a strict religious household where music was both salvation and struggle. His father, a minister, imposed harsh discipline, while his mother encouraged his artistic gift. By the early 1960s, after joining Motown Records, Gaye quickly became one of the label's brightest stars. Nicknamed the Prince of Motown, he delivered hits that blended gospel passion with pop accessibility, such as How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You and I Heard It Through the Grapevine, the latter selling over 4 million copies and becoming Motown's biggest-selling single at the time. But Gaye was more than just a hitmaker. He was a visionary. In 1971, he released the groundbreaking album What's Going On, a socially conscious masterpiece that addressed war, poverty, and racial injustice. It went on to sell over 2 million copies in the U.S. and is frequently ranked among the greatest albums in history. Gaye showed that soul music could carry not just rhythm and romance, but also protest and pain. The 1970s brought him further triumphs. Let's Get It On. 1973 became an anthem of sensuality, while Sexual Healing 1982, recorded after his move to Belgium during a turbulent period of exile, won him 2 Grammy Awards. Yet his personal life was far less harmonious. Gaye battled depression, drug addiction, and crippling financial troubles. His marriages were stormy. His relationship with Motown founder Berry Gordy strained, and the IRS hounded him for millions in unpaid taxes. Do you think Marvin Gaye's pain made his music more powerful, or did fame simply magnify the struggles he was already destined to face? The most tragic chapter came in 1984. Living back in Los Angeles with his parents, Gaye's fragile mental state and long-standing tension with his father spiraled out of control. On April 1, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father after a heated argument. The world was stunned. An icon whose voice had spoken of love, healing, and unity had been silenced by violence within his own home. His death was not just a personal tragedy, but a cultural wound felt deeply across generations. The Commodores, who had admired Gaye as a trailblazer, paid tribute to him in their Grammy-winning song Night Shift 1985, alongside Jackie Wilson. The track honored Gaye's legacy, keeping his name alive on radio waves even after his passing. Later, they would add Michael Jackson to the tribute, proving how deeply interconnected soul legends were in carrying each other's legacies. Marvin Gaye left behind more than just music. He left behind a legacy of vulnerability, brilliance, and authenticity. His catalog continues to inspire artists from Stevie Wonder to Beyoncé, while What's Going On remains as urgent today as it was half a century ago. His life was both a soaring symphony and a tragic requiem, reminding us that genius often walks hand in hand with turmoil. Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson's story is one of dazzling showmanship, chart-topping glory, and a heartbreaking fall that shocked the music world. Born on June 9, 1934 in Detroit, Michigan, Wilson grew up immersed in gospel and rhythm and blues. By his late teens, he was already a rising talent, replacing Clyde McPhatter as lead singer of Billy Ward and the Dominoes before launching a solo career in 1957. With his electrifying stage presence and soaring tenor, Wilson earned the nickname Mr. Excitement, captivating audiences, with his ability to blend gospel fire with pop smoothness. His breakthrough came with Reet Petite, co-written by a then-unknown Berry Gordy, who would later found Motown Records. From there, Wilson became a pioneer of crossover R&B, delivering classics like Lonely Teardrops, Higher and Higher, and Baby Workout. Over his career, he scored more than 50 charting singles, proving himself as one of the defining voices of early soul. His performances' dynamic spins, splits, and sweat-soaked intensity set the blueprint for later superstars like James Brown, Michael Jackson, and Prince. Without Wilson, the language of stage performance in popular music might have been very different. But fame came at a steep cost. Wilson's personal life was plagued by turmoil, financial mismanagement, rocky marriages, and legal troubles. Despite earning millions, he often found himself broke due to corrupt handlers and poor business decisions. Worse still, tragedy seemed to stalk his family life, with one of his daughters murdered and his son killed in a shooting. These private pains fueled his music, but also left him vulnerable. Do you think artists like Jackie Wilson, who gave everything on stage, were celebrated enough during their lifetimes, or only truly honored after their tragedies? The darkest moment of Wilson's life came on September 29, 1975, while performing at a New Jersey nightclub. In the middle of singing Lonely Teardrops, he collapsed from a massive heart attack. Audience members initially thought it was part of the act until he failed to rise. Though rushed to the hospital, Wilson was left in a coma, suffering severe brain damage. He never fully recovered. For nearly 9 years, Wilson remained in a hospital bed, unable to perform, unable to speak, his once vibrant life reduced to silence. On January 21, 1984, he passed away at just 49 years old, ironically only 3 months before Marvin Gaye's equally tragic death. Jackie Wilson's passing devastated fans and fellow artists, yet his influence remained undeniable. In 1985, the Commodores honored him alongside Marvin Gaye in their Grammy-winning hit Night Shift, immortalizing both men as legends whose voices would continue to guide listeners from beyond. Michael Jackson, who idolized Wilson, later paid tribute to him at award shows, calling him one of his greatest inspirations. Today, Wilson is recognized as one of the architects of modern soul and R&B. He was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987 and honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His voice, both raw and refined, remains a benchmark for passion in performance. Jackie Wilson lived fast, gave everything on stage, and died far too soon. His tragedy reminds us that even the brightest flames can burn out suddenly, but their light continues to inspire generations. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's life remains one of the most dazzling and tragic stories in music history. Born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana, Jackson grew up in a working-class family as the seventh of 10 children. His father, Joseph Jackson, was a strict disciplinarian who recognized his son's talent early on. By the late 1960s, Michael was thrust into the spotlight as the youngest lead singer of the Jackson 5, Motown's youthful sensation. With his angelic voice and magnetic presence, he helped launch hits like I Want You Back, ABC, and I'll Be There, turning the Jackson brothers into a worldwide phenomenon before Michael was even a teenager. While his childhood was sacrificed to fame, Jackson's solo career in the 1980s transformed him into the undisputed king of pop. His 1982 album Thriller shattered every record, selling over 66 million copies worldwide, certified sales making it the best-selling album of all time. Its music videos, Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller, revolutionized the medium, turning MTV into a global cultural force. Jackson became the first black artist to receive heavy rotation on the channel, breaking barriers for generations to come. His follow-up albums, Bad 1987 and Dangerous 1991, produced more chart-topping singles, while his electrifying stage performances, complete with the gravity-defying moonwalk, set a new standard for live entertainment. Yet, behind the glitz, Jackson's life grew increasingly troubled. Fame left him isolated, his appearance transformed by vitiligo, and multiple cosmetic surgeries fueling endless speculation. His sprawling Neverland Ranch symbolized both his success and his yearning for a lost childhood. Despite his generosity, donating over $500 million to charities across his lifetime, Jackson faced constant scrutiny, legal battles, and media mockery. Allegations of child abuse dogged his career from the 1990s onward, overshadowing his artistry, though he was never convicted in a court of law. Do you think Michael Jackson was more a victim of the price of superstardom, or did his own choices create the shadows that followed him? Tragically, Jackson's comeback never came to fruition. In 2009, he announced, "This is it," a 50-concert residency in London that sold out in hours. Rehearsals revealed glimpses of his old brilliance, but also his frailty. On June 25, 2009, Jackson died at the age of 50 from acute propofol intoxication administered by his doctor. The world was stunned. Fans around the globe gathered spontaneously in grief. His death was ruled a homicide, and his physician Conrad Murray was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. The Commodores, deeply moved, added Jackson's name to their live performances of Night Shift, which had already honored Marvin Gaye and Jackie Wilson. In 2010, they even re-recorded the song as a tribute, ensuring the king of pop's name stood alongside other legends taken too soon. Despite the scandals and controversies, Jackson's legacy as an artist is unmatched. With over 400 million records sold worldwide, 13 Grammy Awards, and the honor of being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, twice his influence is still felt in every corner of music, dance, and pop culture. Michael Jackson was a genius who gave the world magic, but his tragic end remains a sobering reminder of the crushing cost of fame. Santana. Carlos Santana's name is synonymous with the electric guitar that sings like a human voice. Born on July 20, 1947, in Autlán de Navarro, Mexico, Santana grew up surrounded by music. His father was a mariachi musician, and by age 8, Carlos was already performing in bars. Moving to San Francisco in the early 1960s, he found himself at the heart of a cultural revolution where rock, jazz, and Latin rhythms collided. It was here that he forged the sound that would make him a legend, a fiery fusion of Afro-Latin beats, blues, and psychedelic rock. Santana's breakthrough came at the Woodstock Festival in 1969, when his band's hypnotic performance of Soul Sacrifice stunned 500,000 spectators and millions more who later saw the film. From that moment, Carlos Santana became more than a musician. He was a symbol of cultural unity. His band's third album, Santana Third, 1971, topped the Billboard charts, while songs like Black Magic Woman and Oye Como Va became classics. By the mid-1970s, Santana was a global name, blending spiritual themes with his signature sound and inspiring not only rock fans but also R&B groups like the Commodores, who admired his fearless blending of styles. His career, however, was far from a smooth climb. The late 1970s and 1980s brought internal conflicts, changing band lineups, and a decline in commercial success. Santana himself battled with substance abuse, confessing in interviews that the temptations of fame nearly destroyed him. Yet his resilience kept him afloat. Do you think Santana's survival through decades of musical change proves that true artistry is timeless, or was his revival just lucky timing? That revival came in spectacular fashion. In 1999, Santana released Supernatural, a collaborative album featuring younger stars like Rob Thomas of Matchbox 20. The single Smooth dominated the airwaves, staying at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 12 consecutive weeks. The album went on to sell over 30 million copies worldwide, winning 9 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. It was one of the most stunning comebacks in music history, cementing Santana as an artist who could transcend generations. Yet even after the triumph, Santana faced challenges. His long marriage to Deborah King, daughter of blues legend Saunders King, ended after 34 years. He also endured health scares, including heart surgery in 2021 and a frightening on-stage collapse in 2022 due to dehydration and exhaustion. Fans feared the worst, but once again, Santana pulled through, determined to keep playing the guitar that had been his voice since childhood. Santana's legacy is monumental. 10 Grammy Awards, 3 Latin Grammys, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 1998, and a career spanning over 5 decades. His music remains a bridge between cultures, languages, and generations. Like the Commodores, who blended funk, soul, and pop to inspire unity, Santana proved that music can break barriers and heal wounds. Carlos Santana is a survivor, a man who turned struggle into sound and sound into healing. His life has been marked by both triumph and tragedy, but his guitar continues to speak a universal truth. Music is the language of the soul. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix remains one of the most transformative figures in the history of music. Born November 27, 1942 in Seattle, Washington, Hendrix grew up in poverty, raised mostly by his father. A shy and introverted child, he found comfort in music, teaching himself to play guitar on a one-string ukulele before eventually upgrading to a second-hand acoustic. By his late teens, Hendrix was already experimenting with sounds few had ever imagined possible. After a stint in the U.S. Army cut short after an injury, Hendrix devoted himself entirely to music. In the early 1960s, he worked as a sideman for Little Richard the Isley Brothers and other R&B legends. But his destiny lay beyond the background. In 1966, he moved to London, where he formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Almost instantly, he became a phenomenon. His debut album, Are You Experienced, released in 1967, contained now iconic tracks like Purple Haze, Foxy Lady, and Hey Joe. Critics hailed him as a genius, while fans were mesmerized by his ability to make a guitar scream weep and soar. Hendrix's performances became the stuff of legend. At the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967, he stunned the world by setting his guitar on fire, a moment that symbolized both his passion and his recklessness. His rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock in 1969 remains one of the most haunting musical statements of the 20th century, a raw reflection of America's turmoil during the Vietnam War era. Do you think Jimi Hendrix's short life added to his myth? Or would he have redefined music even further had he lived longer? Despite his brilliance, Hendrix battled inner demons. He struggled with exhaustion from relentless touring as well as heavy drug and alcohol use. Friends recalled his gentle, almost childlike demeanor offstage, a sharp contrast to his wild performances. Yet fame magnified his vulnerabilities. Legal battles, pressure from record labels, and constant media scrutiny weighed heavily on him. On September 18, 1970, Hendrix's life came to a sudden, tragic end in London. At just 27 years old, he choked to death on his own vomit after taking sleeping pills, joining the infamous 27 Club of artists who died young, including Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and later Kurt Cobain. The music world was devastated. Hendrix had only released 3 studio albums, yet he had completely redefined the guitar's role in rock, funk, and soul. His influence can still be heard today. Artists from Prince to Lenny Kravitz, and even funk-driven groups like the Commodores, drew inspiration from his fearless blending of genres. His ability to fuse blues rock and psychedelic sounds helped pave the way for the experimental spirit of the 1970s. Posthumously, Hendrix's legend only grew. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992, and Rolling Stone ranked him the greatest guitarist of all time. More than 50 years after his death, his music continues to sell millions, proving that true artistry never fades. Jimi Hendrix lived like a supernova, burning bright, changing everything and disappearing too soon. His tragedy was not just his death, but the endless possibilities the world never got to hear from the man who made the guitar speak like no one else before or since. Albert King. Albert King was more than a bluesman. He was a towering presence both physically and musically, whose soulful guitar lines carved their way into the DNA of rock, R&B, and funk. Born on April 25, 1923 in Indianola, Mississippi, King grew up in poverty working on cotton plantations while nurturing a deep love for gospel and blues. Left-handed and self-taught, he played a right-handed guitar flipped upside down, a technique that gave his music its searing, unconventional sound. By the 1950s, King was moving from Mississippi juke joints to the electric blues scene of St. Louis, where he began recording singles. But it was the 1960s that elevated him into legend. Signing with Stax Records in Memphis, King unleashed Born Under a Bad Sign in 1967, an album that would define his career. The title track, with its ominous line, "If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all," became an anthem for hardship and resilience. Backed by the Stax house band, Booker T, and the MGs, the album blended blues grit with soul grooves, laying groundwork that influenced funk-driven acts like the Commodores a decade later. Standing 6'4" tall and weighing over 250 pounds, King was an imposing figure on stage, often nicknamed the Velvet Bulldozer. His weapon of choice, a Gibson Flying 5 guitar affectionately called Lucy, helped him craft piercing bends and sweet wailing solos that inspired generations. Young guitarists like Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, and Stevie Ray Vaughan openly cited King as a mentor from afar, borrowing his phrasing and emotional intensity. Do you think Albert King gets enough recognition as the foundation for modern guitar heroes? Or has history unfairly overshadowed his influence? Yet despite his brilliance, King's life was not free of struggle. Financial instability plagued much of his career, and the blues genre itself often received less mainstream recognition compared to rock and soul. While he influenced global superstars, King himself never reached the same commercial heights. Touring relentlessly to support himself, he pushed through health challenges including diabetes and heart issues, which worsened in his later years. Still, King never stopped performing. In the 1970s and 80s, as bands like the Commodores and Earth, Wind & Fire blended funk with soul, King adapted, collaborating with younger artists and maintaining his reputation as a master of live shows. His performance with Stevie Ray Vaughan on In Session in 1983 remains one of the most iconic guitar duels ever recorded, showing that even in his 60s, King's fire was undiminished. Tragically, Albert King's story ended in 1992. On December 21, 1992, just 2 days after announcing he had finally been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he died of a heart attack at the age of 69 in Memphis. The timing was bittersweet. Recognition came, but far too late to be fully enjoyed. Today, Albert King is remembered as one of the three kings of the blues, alongside B.B. King and Freddie King. His influence echoes not only in blues and rock, but in soul and funk grooves that defined the 1970s. For groups like the Commodores, who admired and incorporated guitar-driven soul into their sound, King's spirit was a guiding force. He was a man born under a bad sign, yet he turned hardship into timeless music that still resonates across generations. James Taylor. James Taylor's life is a portrait of beauty born from struggle, a journey where personal demons often shadowed his angelic voice. Born on March 12, 1948 in Boston, Massachusetts, Taylor grew up in a privileged but emotionally turbulent household in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. By his teenage years, he was already battling depression, finding solace in the guitar and the soft, introspective songwriting that would later define him. In 1966, Taylor's early attempts to break into music in New York were derailed by crippling mental health struggles and a stay at a psychiatric hospital. But from this darkness came a rare sensitivity that infused his music. In 1968, he became the first non-British artist signed to Apple Records, the Beatles' own label, releasing his self-titled debut. Although it received modest attention, the seeds of his style, gentle melodies, whispered intimacy, and raw honesty were already planted. Taylor's breakthrough arrived in 1970 with his second album, Sweet Baby James. The single Fire and Rain became a cultural touchstone, chronicling his battles with addiction, depression, and the suicide of a close friend. Its haunting line, "I've seen fire, and I've seen rain," resonated with millions and cemented him as the voice of vulnerability in a turbulent era. His career soared through the 1970s with hits like You've Got a Friend, written by Carole King, Country Road, and Shower the People. By 1971, he had won his first Grammy and was performing to sold-out audiences across America. Taylor's confessional style made him the face of the singer-songwriter movement, standing alongside peers like Joni Mitchell and Jackson Browne. Do you believe artists like James Taylor are celebrated more for their pain than for their joy? And does that shape how we listen to their music? Yet the very struggles that fueled his songs nearly consumed him. Taylor fought a decades-long battle with heroin addiction, which strained relationships and threatened his career. His marriage to singer Carly Simon, once considered a fairy tale union of two musical icons, ended in 1983, strained by infidelity and substance abuse. Though the couple had two children, including musician Ben Taylor, the divorce left scars that echoed in both artists' later work. Despite these hardships, Taylor never stopped creating. The 1980s brought renewed success with songs like Her Town Too, while the 1990s and 2000s saw him emerge as a beloved elder statesman of folk rock. His soothing baritone voice became a balm in times of crisis, often used at benefit concerts and national events. When America grieved, Taylor's voice was their gentle, steady healing. Taylor's resilience paid off. With over 100 million records sold worldwide, he is one of the best-selling music artists of all time. He has won 6 Grammy Awards, been inducted into both the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and in 2015, he finally achieved his first-ever Billboard #1 album with Before This World, nearly 5 decades into his career. Today, James Taylor's story remains one of survival. He turned inner battles into timeless songs that comfort millions. Like the Commodores, who sang of both love and loss, Taylor proved that music born of vulnerability can last forever. His life reminds us that even when scarred by fire and rain, a true artist can still shine with quiet brilliance. The story of the Commodores and the legends connected to them shows us how fame, success, and tragedy are forever intertwined. From Lionel Richie's soaring solo career to Milan Williams' heartbreaking battle with leukemia, from Marvin Gaye's violent end to Michael Jackson's sudden passing, their journeys remind us that talent does not shield anyone from pain. At Legends of Black Excellence, we honor these voices, but also ask, should we remember them more for their struggles or for the timeless music they gave us? The answer isn't simple, and that's what keeps the debate alive.